Everybody should be on 461. It is a story that I have assigned to build a fire. I've assigned the selection test on HMH online, and I have also assigned analyze the text questions that was last Thursday and Friday. So this is the story that it's over, okay? So everybody, now that you're on 461, we see the title. I want you to turn to page 478. Let's discuss the questions that we're going to be answering. So the questions are on page 478. And again, I've told you before in the past that if you know that you are going to have questions after the reading, what is it important to do? Read the questions before, so you know as you're reading what you're looking for, right? You read a question, and then when you get to a certain point of the story, you're going to be like, oh, that's what the question was asking me. There's my answer. Okay? Makes it a little easier and a little more, it saves time rather than reading the question and having to go back into the story and try to skim where it's at. Okay? Everybody with me? So page 478, analyze the text questions. We're on number 1, cite evidence. What details from the story reflect what you know about realism? How do these details impact your understanding of the story? Somebody tell me what realism is. What is realism?
Real.
Pretty much in the word, right? It's something that really happens. Okay? It is something that is factual, something that if you read or told the story, it can really happen. Okay? Now, again, sometimes you hear stories, you even watch movies that are kind of like, there's no way. Fast and the Furious, no way they're doing some of that stuff. They're on top of a semi where it's going 100 miles an hour and they're standing like this. The Rock is on the top, a car flies over, he like pushes it with his hand. Yeah, okay, I'm sure he's strong, but he ain't that strong. Alright? So, here's the second part. How do these details impact your understanding of the story? Alright? Number 2, works of naturalism often address the theme of survival of the fittest. Give examples that show how London's story develops this theme. What message does the story convey about the survival of the fittest? What is survival of the fittest? Huh? Everyone for themselves. Only the strong survive. Dog eat dog world right here. Either you keep up or you fall back. Okay? Excuse me. All right, somebody tell me what theme is. What is theme?
What it's about.
What's the message behind it? What's it trying to get at, right? What's the idea? All right? So that's number 2. Number 3, analyze. What moral dilemma does the man face when his second fire fails? How does this dilemma and his subsequent actions influence the plot? How does the setting enhance the seriousness of this scene? So dilemma meaning what? Problem. What's his problem? What's his fate? What's his choices he has here? Okay. What is plot? A sequence of events, right? On that crucible paper, what did we have? A little mountain, right? What was this called? The uprising. Rising action. And then at the very top, the peak, it was what? Climax. And then coming down? Falling action. Okay? So as we pay attention to the things that's happening with this guy in the plot, we're trying to find out what event is happening, right? Because when you think of plot, you're thinking of an event. Something's happening. And then is this event leading up to the climax, or is this event on the falling action? Right? Or is this event the actual climax? Okay, so that's something we're going to be looking for. Alright? And then we know what setting is. It's just where it's taking place. Right? So that's what we're going to be looking for, is in the situation where he's facing a problem. Where is he? What is the message he's trying to give us? Right? And then what event is happening in that place? Everybody with me? Okay, number 4. At the beginning of the story, what motivates the man to travel? How do his motivations change over the course of his journey? Again, I'm sure some of you have been through situations where you tell a friend, yeah, I'll go with you, no problem. And then when you get there, it's like, oh, I shouldn't even have came. I should stay home. Anybody ever have that? Right? I was feeling that way at the track meets this past week. Jesus, I just want to be in class. Can I just go to class? It's windy. My lips are chapped. There's dirt all up in the air. My eyes burn. My sinuses are acting up. Like it's just sunburned, right? Do I got a nice tan? No? Okay. Well, I worked on it, right? I worked on it. It's the same as ever, right? Okay. That's usually what happens. I turn real, real red and then go back to normal. So, anywho, number 5. As a man tries a second time to start a fire, he remembers the advice of the old timer. How has the man's opinion of the old timer's advice changed? What message do you think London intends to convey about this change? Okay, again, as we're reading, once we get to the part where the guy starts talking about the old timer's message, what do we automatically know? This spot's going to answer question number 5. Okay? Because question number 5 is asking about his thoughts on the message of the old timer. So as we get there in the story, you automatically know my answer to number 5 is going to be right here somewhere. So you start paying attention to it. And you should be paying attention the whole time, but that's why we read the questions first. So as we hit that spot, we know. Okay? So everybody, let's go back to 461, please. It's kind of a long story. It's a short story, but it's really good. Okay, that's why I wanted to come back. Typically, I let you guys answer the questions. We talk about the story, then we move on. But this is a really good story. Kind of like the pendulum, right? I kind of like that story. Did we like that story or not really? I liked it. And then the video with it, I thought it was pretty cool. I don't know about you guys. Weird, right? Very different. So let's read this story. Before we begin the story, though, I do want to pose a question to the entire class, and I would love different input on this. Okay, here's my question: to what degree do we control our lives? Okay, and Mariah, what do you think? To what degree do you feel like you control your life? How much of your life do you feel like you control? Most of it. Okay. Anybody?
Like 50%.
Like 50%. Who's the other 50%?
God.
God. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Parents.
If
Okay. Huh?
If you're influenced by someone.
If you're influence can also get. I haven't heard that one today. That's not bad, right? If you're influenced by someone, you really don't have. You kind of give them control, right? That's kind of what influence means, is to take control of someone else's, or manipulation. If you're manipulated, right? Do we know what manipulation means? Okay, it just means when you make somebody do what you want them to do. Okay, so in my opinion, I think a lot of it comes into what I feel like I control of my life are my choices. That's the degree that I feel like I'm in control. Okay, I think my choices put me where I want to be. My choices make me, have more obstacles than I probably wanted. My choices, give me success at times, right? But we're human, so your choices can be good and bad. Right? It's a little bit of both. But for you guys who are still teenagers and 15, 16, 17 years old, your parents might have, or you're 18, my bad, Pim. Your parents may have that type of influence or that control over it, which is fine. But again, the question I want us thinking about is, to what degree does this guy have control of his life? Because his choices are putting him in places. What can you not control though? What do you not have control of?
Nature.
Huh? Consequences, okay. Nature, all right. I would say environment, okay. What else? Other people, huh? Fate, like destiny, okay. You're right. Here's my thing. I feel sometimes you control your fate with the choices you make, right? The consequences come with the choices you make, but it's kind of give or take. All right, now are you willing to take that leap, or are you rather wait and just see what happens? Let fate take control, and that's when you give control to fate, right? You just let things happen, right, Xavier? There's no reason to control it. You just let it happen. Just let it go, right? Go with the flow. I'm not mad at that. All right, so that's the question I want us to have in mind as we read about this gentleman here in this story to build a fire. Is to what degree does he have control? Okay, so we're going to start with the background of the author. and then we'll jump from there. I'll start the reading, and then you guys will follow up. I'll pick someone to read next, and then the next person will pick the next person, and then we'll go through there. Okay, so for the rest of the class we're reading. I'll give you the end of class to kind of catch up on your notes and do that. Everybody with me? All right. So background. Jack London, 1876 to 1916, not only wrote adventure stories, he lived them. London traveled as a hobo across the United States, tried his luck in the Klondike Gold Rush, escaped the typhoon on a seal hunting ship, and sailed the South Seas in his own boat, the Snark. London's formal education was limited, but he read widely using public libraries. Many of his works, including The Story to Build a Fire, have themes involving survival and human versus nature. His novel, The Call of the Wild, in 1903 brought London fame and is still one of his best-known works. London died in California at age 40. What is a hobo? Homeless person. Okay? And, I mean, they don't have to be homeless, right? They could just choose to be kind of all over the place, right? It's like, I mean, back in the day, they kind of called them nomads. They really didn't have a home. They really didn't have like a set place. They would just kind of travel as time comes. Wherever the food went, they went. Wherever work went, they went, right? And it was kind of just them traveling along with the seasons of the animals because they had to survive themselves, right? Human versus nature. Okay, so this man chose to be a hobo, started traveling, survived the typhoon, died at 40. Right? It doesn't say how he died. I'm curious because it's a very young age, but he probably died doing something crazy because he's over here going through a typhoon and sailing the South Seas and doing all this, but he's a hobo, right? How was he able to do it? That'll be something we'll look into. So, setting a purpose. As you read, pay attention to the details that depict the protagonist's dealings with the natural setting, as well as details that contrast the actions of the man with those of the dog. So, protagonist is who? The main character. So, what we're going to be paying attention to as well when we're reading is, how did the main character deal with his situations? Was he in control? Was he not in control? Was it a choice he made? Okay? And then we're also going to depict or get the details that contrast. Contrast meaning what? When you contrast something, what do? You tell the differences. Okay? You tell the differences of the actions of the man with the actions of the dog. Okay? All right. Paragraph 1. I'm starting and then I'll pick somebody right after. Day had broken cold and gray, exceedingly cold and gray, when the man turned aside from the main Yukon Trail and climbed the high earth bank where a dim and light little travel trail led eastward through the fat spruce timberland. It was a steep bank, and he paused for a breath at the top, excusing the act to himself by looking at his watch. It was 9 o'clock. There was no sun or hint of sun. There was not a cloud in the sky. It was a clear day, and yet there seemed an intangible pall over the face of things, a subtle gloom that made the day dark, and that was due to the absence of the sun. This fact did not worry the man. He was used to the lack of sun. It had been days since he had seen the sun, and he knew that a few more days must pass before that cheerful orb, due south, would just peep above the skyline and dip immediately from view. Now, before we turn the page, intangible, meaning unable to be defined or understood. The pall is overspreading atmosphere of gloom and depression. So again, this guy it's the day starting, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, he just got to the top of a hill. There's no sun. I know we don't get a lot of snow in Carlsbad, New Mexico, but if you guys ever been through a snowy day where the sun's not really shining, it's not quite cloudy, but it's kind of gloomy. It's one of my favorite days to just stay home, right? Anybody have those days? Kind of like rainy days, gloomy days. It's just a day you just want to be home. Okay, so it's kind of like one of those days. All right, so remember when there's a number or the word is in bold, what is that telling you? There's a side note to it, right? There is some type of definition to it. Everybody with me? All right, so here's number 1, paragraph 1. We're starting. Huh? Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I did just read it. Let's keep going. Paragraph 2. All right. Way to be on your toes right there. The man flung a look back along the way he had come. The Yukon lay a mile wide and hidden under the 3 feet of ice. On top of this ice were as many feet of snow. It was all pure white, rolling in gentle undulations where the ice jams of the freeze-up had formed. North and south, as far as his eye could see, it was unbroken white, save for a dark hairline that curved and twisted from around the spruce-covered island to the south, and that curved and twisted away into the north, where it disappeared behind another spruce-covered island. The dark hairline was the trail, the main trail, that led south 500 miles to the Chilkoot Pass, Daya, and Saltwater, and that led north 70 miles to Dawson, and still on to the north 1,000 miles to Nulato, and finally to St. Michael on the Bering Sea, 1,000 miles and half 1,000 more. But all this, the mysterious far-reaching hairline trail, the absence of the sun from the sky, the tremendous cold and the strangeness and weirdness of it all, made no impression on the man. It was not because he was long used to it. He was a newcomer in the land, a Chichaco, and this was his first winter. The trouble with him was that he was without imagination. He was quick and alert in the things of life, but only in the things and not in the significance. 50 degrees below zero meant 80 odd degrees of frost. Such fact impressed him as being cold and uncomfortable, and that was all. It did not lead him to meditate upon his frailty as a creature of temperature, and upon man's frailty in general, able only to live within certain narrow limits of heat and cold. And from there on it did not lead him to the conjectural field of immortality and a man's place in the universe. 50 degrees below zero stood for a bite of frost that hurt and that must be guarded against by the use of mittens, ear flaps, warm moccasins, and thick socks. 50 degrees below zero was to him just precisely 50 degrees below zero. That there should be anything more to it than that was a thought that never entered his head. Okay, paragraph 3 has a lot of great details on it. All right, let me ask you this. When it says, the trouble with him was that he was without imagination. He was quick and alert in the things of life, but only in the things and not in the significances. What's it telling us? Someone want to take a shot? What do we get from that? Okay, to an extent, he doesn't find deeper meanings in certain things. All right. Anybody else? Okay, he's not thinking ahead, seeing how it's going to affect him, which is pretty much all the money, right? And to both of you. So here's my thing. He's knowledgeable on things of life. So in other words, he knows that he knows that it's a cold winter. He knows that he's going to be hiking in the mountains. He knows that, there's snow on the ground, but he just doesn't know how cold it's actually going to be. He doesn't know how far he's actually going to have to walk. He doesn't know, how grueling this hike is. Okay? Has any of y'all ever, gone somewhere and maybe you're going to a dance or something, you're going to whatever, and you get all, you're all sharp, looking sharp fellas and ladies, you're all, got you dressed up and all this, and then you figure out, man, it's freaking cold, I should have wore something different. Anybody ever had that? Right? You get there, or maybe you're going to a place, you text your friend and you say, hey, what do you even wear to this thing? What are you wearing? Do I have to dress up? This weekend I went to that quinceañera, and I was looking sharp, can't even lie. I dressed up real nice, cleaned up a little bit, and when I get there, stuck out like a sore thumb. Because everybody was wearing sharp pointy boots and cowboy hats and looking real cowboyish, and I was like, wow, I do not fit in this place for sure, right? But it's one of those things, right? I can't control it. It's an environment I can't control, but I can control that I dressed up, okay? So that's what it means by he knows what he's getting himself into, but he doesn't quite understand to the full extent what's actually fixing to happen, okay? Because 50 below zero is pretty stinking cold. What's freezing temperature of water? 32 degrees Celsius, right? So if you're anything below 32 degrees, that means ice is freezing. Okay? Israel, read number 4.
4?
Yep. Paragraph 4, please.
As he turned to go
Speculatively.
Speculatively, there was a sharp twisted crackle that started hanging back again and again. And there before it could fall to the snow, a little spittle.
Yep, spittle.
Spittle crackled, he knew at a 50 below. Spittle cracked on the snow, but this spittle had crackled in the air, undoubtedly. It was cooler than 50 below. How much colder he did not know, but the temperature did not matter. He was bound for their own plain on the left fork near St. Creek, where the boys were already. They had come over across the divide from the Indian Creek country, while he had come the roundabout way to take a look at the possibility of getting out of the logs in the spring. From the islands, and the Yukon, he would be sent to camp by 6 o'clock the day after that. It was true, but the day was needed. The fire would be going, a hot supper would be ready. As for lunch, he pressed his hand against the
Protruding, you're right.
Bundle under his jacket. It was also under his shirt, wrapped up in a handkerchief, and lying against the naked skin. It was the only way to keep his biscuits from freezing. He smiled agreeably to himself as he thought of those biscuits, each cut open and soaked in bacon grease, and each included generous slice of fried bacon.
Thank you, sir. So we found out what he's doing in the mountains. What is he doing? He eventually will meet up with the boys, but what is he doing? Anybody catch that? Gavin, go read the last sentence on page 462. It started with they had come over.
Yeah, they had come over across the divide from the Indian Creek country, while he had come through the roundabout way to take a look at the possibilities of getting out logs in the spring.
Okay, so we know he's going to go meet his boys, right? So they went one way, and he said that he came in the other way because he's looking for routes to see how I get logs out. So in other words, he may be a logger. Anybody ever heard of that? Seen that show, Loggers? You know them light poles that we got outside, the electrical poles? Where do you think those come from?
The ground.
They're trees. They're ran through a machine that cuts them that way. So yes, they come from the ground. Why not? I mean, they're wood, right? So and that's what he's doing. So you got this man, he's traveling one way, he's meeting his friends on the other way, and what they're doing is they're coming through, and he's just trying to figure out, where could I bring my machines? How do I get logs out of here, right? And then all right, and then it also told us how cold it actually was. Okay, how cold was it? There was a sharp explosive crackle when he spit. It crackled. What is that telling us? Yes. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the spit crackled. What is it doing? Freezing, right? Anybody ever had done that science experiment where it's like -5 or 10 below outside? You boil hot water and you throw it in the air. What happens? It turns into snow, right? It freezes automatically. Anybody ever seen that? Right? I think it got real big on TikTok for a little bit. Okay, and it's been around a long time, but of course, as these technology advances, so does everything. Okay, so we know how cold it is. We know what he's doing now. All right, now let's move on. Okay.